Welcome friends, today we will be building this piano key shelf. Welcome to the channel. This is where you'll find woodworking, crafting, artistic painting, building, DIY, and pretty much everything else creative. So if that is your thing, please consider subscribing and caressing that shiny little bell that will notify you when the next project gets its wings. And don't forget to stay all the way to the end in fears you might miss something awesome. So stay tuned. Pour apart an old scrap pallet, and where those holes are, that's where the staples came through. So I lined it up on the chop saw for the blade to go right through the center of those holes. I cut the end off. I lined up the center holes, cut it in half. And then I flipped it around and cut the other end off. So I ended up with two smaller pieces that I'll use later for the ebony pieces. And these ones I cut in half again, the longer pieces. And I'll be using those as the ivory pieces. However, I found that those are just a little bit wider than I wanted, so I cut them back in half again. And I already clipped the corner off one side, so after I cut it in half, I had to bring it back over to the chop saw and took a little stack and I cut the other corner off. Then I put my table saw sled on so I could take those smaller pieces that I had and cut them in thirds. As you can see on the back of the fence there, I lined it up with a 1-inch mark and I cut it in 3 different pieces. Then I took the rest of the smaller pieces in the stack and I finished making a pile of those also. After I was done cutting those into smaller pieces, I brought them over to the belt sander and just gave them a quick little scuffing to take the rough edges off. And then I beveled the edge, because if you look at the edge of a ebony piece, you see those beveled edges. Did a little dry run there. And then I put them all on the table to paint them. And I didn't paint a solid white. I just kind of took the brush and gave it a rough brushing just to see, so you can still see the wood marks. I tackled that whole stack, put those aside, and I stacked the smaller ebony pieces and painted those just a rough black. And still you could see a little bit of the wood through there to give it that rustic look. And after those were dry, I brought them back out to the shop, lined them up on my framing square, and gave a little glue, and I tacked them to a little strip in the back. As you can see, I put a little spacer in between each white key until that was all done, and then I took another strip and stapled the bottom again, putting a spacer in between there. Then I laid out all the ebony keys, flipped them upside down, put a little bit of glue on them, changed the size of the brad nails, and I stapled those in. I started with 3, I skipped a spot, did 2, and then 3, and then 2. Then I took and measured the top piece so I could cut a shelf for it. I measured that to the length of the keys, cut that, and I ended up trimming the edge off on the table saw also, because you can see here that there was a couple of cracked pieces and the edges were a little rough, so I gave it a little trimming. Then I took it over and started sanding all the loose pieces of paint on it that was already painted. And I pounded some pilot holes and pre-drilled the holes for the top of the shelf to line up with the keys. I put that on there, and I also pre-drilled the keys, and then I glued on the top of the keys and screwed the shelf onto the top. Got that all on there. And there was 2 of them that I just kept because I made 4 of these. I had enough pieces to make 4. So as you can see, I cut the side pieces and sanded those down. And this is the final product. And this one is the one I just had the shelf on. And then I have this one with the 2 edges that I cut. And this one I did a little bit different. I put a backing on it and I did a different side piece. So those were all of those pieces that I put together to make a piano key shelf. And there they are, piano key shelves. Thank you again for sticking around. And can I ask you to do me a gigantic favor? And that is to poke that little thumbs up button right in the eyeball. It would be most appreciated, and who knows, you might just win the lottery because you did. And if you haven't gotten around to subscribing yet, you may do so right here. And if you want to stick around for another episode of Let's See What We Can Come Up With Next, then jab your bony little finger right on this rectangular box right over here. Let me know what's on your mind in the comments below. Thank you again for visiting with me, and as always, have a groovy.